Hooray, everybody, we've come to where the leopards were yesterday, Karula, the great queen, and her 2 cubs, and look, just beyond them, eating totally peacefully next to the predators, a herd of elephants. Isn't that fantastic? My name is James Henry. On camera today is Xongile Brain Gerding. It's good to have him back on the vehicle with us. Please do talk to us. # Safari Live. Questions at WildEarthTV are the best ways to get hold of us during the course of the next 3 hours. Let's go back to this cat and her new friends. Isn't this fantastic? Now, I don't know. Xongile says that the duiker that was killed... Oh, okay, I can see it. It's being eaten. Thanks, Louise. Yes, I'm with them. I'm well aware. In the tree, the leopard is with the duiker. There's another little leopard up there. This is just fantastic. Everyone, you don't see this. Elephants hate being around predators normally. They chase wild dogs. They chase lions especially. They chase hyenas. And there's no way, I cannot believe they haven't seen the leopards. One of them is now stalking the elephants. I'm going to move slightly. The signal is not great here, everybody. So if we do lose signal, I'm sure it'll stabilize as we get a little bit closer. Just want to move very slowly because it's so nice having the elephants here also completely relaxed. There's a tiny little baby elephant here. And the leopard that we first saw has just gone around the left-hand side of your picture. What a start. And here, Xongile, I'm not sure you're going to be able to pick her up. It could be Xongile, at least Hosana. Just off to the right-hand side, behind those elephants, comes another leopard. He'll probably pop out where I'm pointing now. There he comes. I'm sure that does, yeah, that's him. He's I think he's probably pretend stalking the elephants. Now this is why a young male leopard is the best fun. They love doing this sort of thing. And there seems to be a really peacefully interesting understanding between the leopards are not creating any issues. Hosana there is just having a little bit of fun, which is exactly what young male leopards do. I've seen them stalking rhino quite often. How cool is this? And William, goes just along the lines. There is definitely a peace here. Nobody is in any kind of conflict. You say, are leopards not a threat to elephants in the same way that lions are? No, absolutely not, William. They are much, much smaller, of course. Karula probably weighs in at about 45 to 50 kilograms, if she's lucky. I'll just move the car quickly. That's about 90 to 100 pounds. And a lioness, remember, is at about 250 pounds. 120 kilograms up to 150 kilograms. So really they are vastly, vastly different sizes. And that means that the lions are potentially a threat to especially young elephants. Let's ease our way in here. Try not to create too much noise, especially if those elephants are going to hang around. There we are. What's your head, Xongile? Wonderful view here. I just hope the signal maintains. You right there, Xongile? Hosana is now stalking the elephant. He thinks he's very big and tough now. And look at his little tail flicking just like his mum's does. As soon as I call anywhere near him, a little surrender flick goes up. Now this is a particularly cheerful way, of course, to have a cat sighting. And just before we go back to Jamie, just remember that it could possibly be a rather difficult time there. And we, of course, are more than happy to answer any of your questions regarding what's going on there, as far as we can understand what's happening. Now, let's move forward here. Just roll into the drainage. Hit a small gardenia plant, Xongile. Now we're just adjusting one or two things, everybody. That obviously is not a leopard at all. It is an elephant. And the leopards and the elephants are still in a very easy piece here. Unfortunately, there really is not a great deal of signal here, so we've had to position in a place where we can see them. There is Hosana, who has been chasing the elephants. Well, not chasing them, he's been giving them a little bit of a rough time. He's now asleep. He's exhausted after his early morning elephant stalk. And then, I don't know if we'll be able to see her, but just over there is the queen. That's very nice. You can see we're up on the bank. We were right down there with her earlier on when you lost us. And she's been eating a piece of kill. And she might actually go up the tree now and see if she can get a bit more from her daughter, who is very hungrily eating some breakfast. Now, for those of you who missed yesterday afternoon's drive, there is a duiker kill in here. And she killed it probably around, I don't know, maybe lunchtime yesterday. It was quite a cool and blustery day, and so very good hunting conditions for any of the big cats. And she's now looking up, ruefully wondering how long it will be before her children stop eating everything that she catches. I often wonder, and we've been talking about this a lot of late, whether or not there is an element of her missing them when they leave home, or if she's just quite happy when they move on and look after themselves. Now, she is 12 years old, of course, as many of you will know. Some of you might be new viewers and you don't know that this leopardess is a 12-year-old. And Lebec, you're wondering how long they can live. Lebec, they probably live in this area to an average of about 15 years or so. Her mother, interestingly, apparently lived to 18, and I've known one other 17-year-old leopard in this area. So potentially to 18, she's got good long-living genes, does Karula. But whether or not she will make it to that age, I don't know. I think it's very nice of her to do what she's doing behind the bush, don't you, Xongile? She's just relieving herself, everybody, and that means that we don't have to look at it. Tingana, the other day, during our live TV show, he moved at the end of the drive, and, well, good grief. The last thing he did on television was to make an enormous deposit on camera. It was very un-leopard-like. And there she has melted into the bushes. We'll just try and get you a shot of Xongile in the tree. Can you see her there, Xongile? Sort of. I'll try and move you. Let's just have a look and see what your picture's like. Oh, I think we can probably get a better picture than that. I'll just move slightly to the right-hand side. Is that any better? Fantastic, isn't it, Jandre? That's probably the best we're going to get for now. And we were talking about those emotions, and we're going to be doing that as we watch the fairly harrowing story of the white mussel disease unfold with the Nkuhuma pride. And Tracy, you want to know if I think leopards have feelings. We've discussed this enormously over the last little while, and I think it is an interesting one. I think let's just have, while I talk about it, you can look at little Hosana over here, who's now in very plain view. Tracy, I don't know. I mean, my current thinking is that animals certainly have feelings. To what extent they're the same as ours is very difficult to say. But remember that traditionally, of course, you know, as a scientist, you're always taught that animals do not express emotions. And it's just patently obvious to anybody who's ever owned a domestic cat, dog, horse, rabbit, or budgerigar that animals very clearly do feel emotions. We know that they feel sad and they feel distressed. We know especially, I mean, I remember the first time I noticed it when we had two dogs at home, one a Labrador and the other something called a Border Terrier, which had the worst breath of any animal in history. And he became completely depressed when the old Labrador died. She died of old age. And there was no question that his character changed completely when she died. And I don't believe it was anything short of depression. Now, if you think that a domestic cat or domestic dog can be like that, I see absolutely no reason why a large-brained wild cat like this wouldn't feel some sense of emotion as well. Now, one of the reasons, there's a whole lot of movement going on now. There's Karula bringing some kill, maybe to share with Hosana, probably not. He's going down to see if he can get some. The reason, if you want to still be scientific about it, which is tends to be where I go, why on earth would there be, what evolutionary advantage could there be to having feelings? And the answer is, of course, that if there was no feeling, if there was no sense of emotion that Karula felt for her babies, well, then there would be no kind of reason for her to look after them and try and make sure that they were okay. Now, that, of course, would be disastrous for her survival. It would be disastrous for the survival of the species. And so I think there's a real evolutionary advantage for them having emotions and feelings. And I think that that absolutely does happen. So, yeah, in short, Tracy, I think animals absolutely do have feelings. How far they go to being like ours, I don't know. But, of course, there's no way for us to understand what they're feeling short of imposing or anthropomorphizing our own emotions onto the animals. But it's a lovely discussion, and I really think it's interesting to try and unpack what's going on. And, of course, remember, with the human being, Tracy, oh, sorry, I'm just trying to turn the radio down. Look at those bracket funguses. With the human being, of course, we interpret our own feelings from the signs of our voices, the sounds of our voices, the look of our faces, our body language, and we're attuned to doing that. Now, of course, when you're looking at a different species with a face that isn't nearly as expressive, doesn't have the musculature to be as expressive, it's very difficult to interpret what's going on. So not the best leopard view we've ever had, but it is possibly the best bracket fungus view we've ever had, don't you think? Isn't that beautiful? There's just life all over the place at the moment. James, you're wondering... You're wondering if I think Karula had to rehoist the bush, not the bush, this is a bush, rehoist the kill yesterday because Hosana looked like he was going to drop it out. I don't know. I've got absolutely no idea. I think it's possible. But certainly a lot of it seems to have been dropped on the ground. That's what she's eating. And he looks like he's trying to get a piece of that action now. We're sitting under a tambuti tree, everybody. which ordinarily is very attractive. Right now it's deeply irritating because every time I turn my head it catches the top of my hat. And that makes me very cross, Xongile. Right, Taylor is out and about on foot, which is marvellous indeed. So let's go and find out what small magnificence she has managed to find for you this time. Well, not much has played out here, everybody, but it is just such a very special thing to sit with these things on a Saturday morning, enjoying the sight of Xongile having her breakfast, and Hosana down below, very well-mannered they are. I was just saying how well-mannered I think they are. Xongile said, of course they are, they've been beautifully brought up. Well, they have, of course. Karula, completely polite, of course, unless she gets very irritated, in which case she is not very polite, she gets very cross. You can see a wonderful image there of her little spot pattern. Carlos, you're a new viewer. Thank you for your question. Well, great to have you on Safari. I hope you'll join us for an extended period. You say, why don't they attack us? Well, Carlos, because they've got something else to eat that tastes much better than we do. I'm obviously being very facetious. That's not why they don't attack us. They don't attack us because they don't see us as predators here, or they don't see us as prey. Now, normally a leopard or a lion will see a human being as a predator. That's when we're on foot. But when we're in a car like this, what you find is that they don't perceive us in the same way. Now, we're not entirely sure why that is. Some people will tell you it's because when we don't stand up, they just don't recognize us for human beings. Some people will say that they just see the whole vehicle as a sort of organism on its own. I'm not convinced that either of those are necessarily correct, but the point is, Carlos, they do not see us in the vehicles as a threat. And because they don't see us as a threat, they don't run away. But likewise, they don't see us as something good to eat, and so they don't attack us. Now, you can get too close to an animal like this, and then they might become afraid of you, and when they become afraid of you, then it is possible that they would try and attack. But it's very, very unusual. On foot, it's a very different situation, Carlos. So you've seen Taylor out on foot today. She's walking around the place. If she was to walk into this area, what would probably happen is that there are two leopards on the ground, obviously, and one in the tree. The one in the tree would almost certainly come out of the tree and melt off into the bush. The mother would probably growl at Taylor on foot, and the other one on the ground, the little son, he would disappear also into the bush. Now, Carlos, the reason they do that is because they see us as a threat. They would never attack her just straight off unless she cornered them. Because they see her as a predator, they would try and get away from her. If you ever get into a position where you happen to corner an animal, where it feels like it cannot move away, it cannot run away, then it might attack. But that would be very unlikely out here. There are, of course, many incidents of leopards and lions attacking human beings, but normally that's either at night, or especially in the case of leopards, the leopard is sick or injured and really doesn't see any other option other than to attack a human being, and again, normally at night. I know this is a little bit disgusting perhaps for some of you, but of course it's just so wonderful watching these leopards acting and learning and growing up. So that was a young duiker. Not a young duiker, in fact, probably an adult male. You can see he's got a fairly good set of horns there, which didn't do him much good in the face of an attack from Karula, the great queen. And it's a beautiful morning. It's quiet, a very gentle kind of dawn chorus. Michael, you're wondering about the size of Hosana there, and he's just at the bottom of the tree, and you're wondering when he will be the same size as his mum. I think probably about a year old, as you suggest. I think a year old will probably see him about the same size as her. She is in there somewhere. And we're not going to try and move from here, everyone, because we just don't have any signal other than where we are right now. And for those of you who are new viewers, like Carlos, that means that, of course, we are broadcasting from a fairly difficult area. There's not a lot in the way of technology around here. And there's the queen. And so there are a couple of technical difficulties that we have to deal with here. One of those is that we're very low down, and that means it's just a little bit difficult sometimes to get a good signal. So we're going to stay here with this picture of the two lovely leopards with their mum sitting off in the bush. And I suspect that eventually he will lose patience down where he is and head up to the tree and see if he can't convince his sister to give him something. Now I want to suggest something about their names, for those of you who know their names. Xongile, of course, is a female name, which means beautiful, and Hosana is a male leopard, and his name means little chief. Now I want to put it to you, everybody, that it's a really, I don't know, how do I put this in a subtle way? I think it speaks volumes of our own human society, the way we've named them, which I think is quite interesting, that we've always named female leopards after beauty of some kind, or, well, in Karula's case it was peace, but often female animals described as beautiful or magnificent or pretty or flower. We've got one of a leopardess called Flower somewhere around here, Shiluva. And the males always described, or often described, in terms of strength and power. And he is described as Little Chief, of course, but he's no less beautiful than she is. I just think that's quite interesting. Now, Dr. Summit, you're wondering about, I've forgotten what you were wondering now. I'm going to get your question back again.
How do we tell the difference between them?
How do we tell the difference between the leopards? Thank you, Dr. Summit. You're a new viewer. Wonderful to have you with us. The way you tell, well, there are any number of ways of doing it, and various, oh dear, I've got big beeping in my ear. There are any number of ways of doing it, and some of our viewers do it in different ways from the way I do it, and that's absolutely fine. But every leopard has unique spots, and a leopard, as we know, Gendre, from the legend, doesn't change its
rosettes.
Spots. Yes, well done. He's got bilharzia brain, he can't think straight. And the easiest way to do it is, well, for me, and it's not always for everybody, is to you look at the spots just below the whisker line, above the whisker line, below the nose. And if you look, in fact, we can probably, obviously she's now turned her head, but if Xongile, on her left-hand side, she's got 4 spots, one of them very small in the front, and on her right-hand side, she's got 5, one very small in the front, and then 4 behind that. Then Hosana, I think, is 3-3 as far as I can remember, unless he's got an extra little one. I think I'm pretty sure he's 3-3. And his mother is 3-4. So she's got 3 on her right, our left, when she's looking at you, and then 4 on the other side. But you can look at the necklace around their necks. They've often got a very distinctive patterning where if you can imagine a necklace of jewels, there's a necklace in the front on the chest of every leopard, and that's a unique spot pattern that's quite easy to look at. And then the most obvious thing about Karula, and this was pointed out by many of our long-term viewers, is the fact that she has something called a spot pattern wow written across her forehead. So she's got the front of her forehead has got a very distinct row of spots that spells out the word wow. So that's the way that we recognize her very easily. Right, Taylor is out on foot, like I say, so Carlos, go and find out from her why she's not being attacked. She is, in fact, with a terrifying predator. Now, not much has happened here, except that Xongile dropped the entire head of the duiker down onto the ground, and Hosana has now taken it off into a bush where he's hoping to eat it. Let me just quickly move this aerial out of the way. There you go. Now I can hear what's going on the radio. Hang on a second. We might have to leave, everybody. My radio is now working. Hold on a sec. Guys, I've been here forever. I can easily move out. I'll move out for you, yours. Okay, copy. I'll move out when Ephraim comes. And so there's Hosana eating the head of the duiker. And up in the top, of course, Xongile and his mum is just around the other side. Now, I don't think we're going to be here for much longer. I think we're going to have to move out. And also because we can't actually go around to the other side and get a better view of them all, I think it's going to be prudent for us to head off and see what else we can see shortly. Anyway, we'll enjoy the last few minutes, and then I will quickly try round the other side and see if we can't get a decent view from there as well. But signal something of a premium in this area. So not a huge amount left. I think they will probably last here until the end of the day, and then I think they'll probably press on. Well, now that's a great shot that we're looking at now in order to address Tracy's question. Tracy, you want to know what the difference between leopard spots and cheetah spots is? Well, if you look at that picture, leopard spots are most traditionally considered like the ones on the top of the leopard there. So they're rosettes surrounding a little sort of brown or yellow or honey-coloured inner core, depending on the leopard that you're looking at. Then if you look at the leopard's leg, which it is now hiding behind a bush, of course, here she comes down the tree. The cheetah have only those spots. They don't have rosettes, Tracy. So those spots that you can see on the bottom of the leopard's legs there are the same kind of spots that a cheetah has. And there are lots of other differences, of course, but those are the main spot differences. A cheetah, of course, a much smaller head, and there's very clear teardrops going from the eyes down to the nose. And astoundingly, you know, I mean, I've seen publications, really eminent publications, mistaking cheetah for leopard, which of course is inexcusable. But really, once you've seen both of them, you will never make a mistake again. They look nothing alike once you've seen them both, Tracy. Well, the tail there. And the tail, of course, if we're talking about the comparison, is a lot more heavy in a cheetah. It's used as a sort of rudder when they're flying across the landscape at 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour. And in a leopard, it's much more slight. They don't have to use it for that sort of thing. And sometimes it looks almost prehensile in a leopard. In other words, they will wrap it around a branch when they're climbing down a tree. I don't know how much strength it has, though. I don't think it's really particularly helpful for them when they're climbing. Fastidious cleaners of themselves. Completely unlike, I bet those lions you've been looking at are covered in gore and muck, whereas these chaps don't like to be like that at all. Well, Aaron in New Zealand, I'm not sure that we're able to answer this question. It's a wonderful question. You say, why is it that the leopards seem to be so unaffected by the drought? I said at the very beginning of the drought season, I said I thought it would be good for the predators because there would be so much weak prey for them to catch, and it would be easy for them to catch things to eat. But at the same time, we now have that situation with the lions where they are just not well. They are in very poor health indeed. And Aaron, why have the leopards not succumbed to any disease? I know that you were talking with Jamie earlier about the variation in diet, that perhaps there's some kind of varied diet. That's possible, that's got something to do with it. You know, leopards have a completely Catholic diet. They'll eat birds and squirrels and mongoose and other predators, and they eat, of course, duiker and steenbok and impala, and maybe that's got something to do with it. If I was to guess, Aaron, I would say that it's not so much the variation as it is what they're eating. Isn't that a beautiful shot of the little princess? Marvelous. Aaron, if we look at what the leopards have been eating largely during the drought, now, of course, we don't see everything they eat, but we do know that Karula has killed much in the way of impala during the drought. And so has Tandi, and so I think have some of the other leopards. And that's because the impala have been weakened, of course. But also, remember, impala are designed to be mixed feeders, which means they've eaten grass, they've eaten leaves, and they have the digestive system capable of dealing with those different foods. The buffalo that the Nkuhumas have been devouring, and certainly they've specialized almost entirely in buffalo. Maybe they've eaten the odd impala, we don't know. those buffalo are not designed to browse full time. And they have been browsing almost full time. Oh, listen, listen. Hosana's getting very cross with his mother. He's been extremely ill-mannered. He sounds like a human being pretending to be a vampire. Nobody, his sister and his mother are not taking him vaguely seriously. They're not even looking at him. And this will happen more and more, of course, as he gets bigger. And eventually he will start stealing food from his sister, I suspect. Just gorgeous, isn't it? Anyway, Aaron, so quickly back to the end of my long discussion. I think buffalo are not designed to browse full-time. Yes, they can browse, we know they can, and we certainly know that cattle can, to a certain extent. But because of the chemical compounds in leaves, they just don't have the digestive systems. They don't have the digestion capable of dealing with those chemicals. Here goes Karula. I think she's going to go up the tree, Chandri. And so while the Nkuhumas have been eating buffalo, which are not designed to eat what they have been eating and therefore could be nutritionally deficient, the leopards have not had the same problem. That's my guess. She don't look like an aging leopard when she does that, does she? She's a fine, fine lady. I got to tell you, the balance is quite astounding, and I imagine it must be much easier to balance as a bipedal thing up in a tree like that, but they managed to get all their feet onto some kind of purchase. Oh, now Marie, of course, we're sitting looking at what is a lineage of fairly honey-coloured leopards, I like to say. Karula's lineage. Others are gold. Others can be indeed strawberry-coloured, well, strawberry-ish coloured. And then others can be black. And you're wondering about black leopards and whether they are related to these ones. They are the same species. They are just black. They do have spots if you look at them in the sun, and they occur in areas of very heavy forestation where being in the deep shadow is advantaged by being much darker than they are here. So often you'll find them in India. You'll often find them also, I think, in Central Africa. They're much more common. There were rumours once of one around here, but nobody ever actually saw it. And there are pictures on camera traps of black leopards up around the Leidenberg area, which is up on the escarpment where there are forests. But it's exactly the same species. They can interbreed completely. There's no difference. It's very much like a black person and a white person. One is melanistic, has a lot of melanin in the skin, and one doesn't have any melanin or very little melanin. It's a very similar kind of difference. This is where a leopard's dismount tends to get slightly less than elegant. You can see the tail being slightly used. Look at the ear poking out there from the right. And down, that was much more elegant than I expected it to be. And just to further that last little bit of discussion that we were having about the diet and that sort of thing, we don't know what's going to happen to these leopards. Remember, those lions were in a fantastic state until, I don't know, maybe a week ago. I remember about a week to 10 days ago, I looked at one of the cubs and I thought it's very strange. She looks like her hips are showing, and that's very odd for animals that have been eating like they have. And then bang, within 10 days, the pride has been really devastated. Now we obviously hope that's not going to happen here. this is wonderful. One of the most beautiful things you can ever find out on foot is the caterpillar of the gambler. Xongile has come down to lie in front of us in the sand. The coolth of the sand give herself a nice clean. She's got the same furry tummy that her mum does. And her mum is now having breakfast. The rather selfish Hosana, the vampire hisser, is sitting inside the bushes. And there he is. It's an excellent picture of him, Xongile. That might be the top shot you've ever got of him.
Thanks, James. Do try.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Let's go back to the mother, perhaps. Xongile, very restful, so let's watch Mum for a little while she has her breakfast. Completely unselfishly sacrificed most of this adult male duiker to the wants of her children, which of course has probably made her the great success she is. Now, if you're not familiar with this leopardess, these are her 9th and 10th cubs that have got this far in life, and if they go independent, they will be the 9th and 10th that she's raised to independence, which is very impressive indeed, I think. That is correct. Yes, it is correct. There's always one litter whose names I can never remember. But the first ones, of course, Tundi and Shadow, who are still around to this day, 9 years old. Unfortunately not nearly as successful as her. Tundi had cubs a little while back, lost one, and as far as we know, she's actually lost both now. And one just doesn't know why. I think there's a huge amount of luck involved, but there's definitely skill too. You don't get as lucky as Karula has all the time unless you have a certain amount of skill. Perhaps she's that much more vigilant over them. Perhaps she's that much more skillful as a huntress. Perhaps she's that much better at hoisting her kills, being fastidious about that. Now there you can see the 4 spots on the one side. I thought there was a very small one in front of those 4 the last time I looked at her closely. Oh, she's a lovely little thing. She's going towards little vampire now. Let's see what happens here. Cyan, I'm afraid I missed your question there. We're going to have to again. It was a comparison between lions and leopards of some sort. Oh, what makes leopards better climbers than lions? You know, they're not necessarily. I just think that they are smaller, so they're probably much in the same way as I find doing a pull-up a little easier than Xongile finds doing a pull-up. The fact that they are lighter probably means that they can climb a little more easily, so their power-to-weight ratio is probably that much higher than it would be on a lion. But lions do climb. They're very adept climbers. But if you look at this tree, for example, I mean, this is a pretty average-sized tree for this area. A lion trying to climb into that tree is going to struggle to find purchase in the same way that that leopard has. But in some areas where there are much bigger trees, then you do find lions climbing trees quite often. And they are very adept at sleeping in trees. Certainly they do it in Kenya, especially at the, what's it called? It used to be called Lake Manyara National Park. I think it still is. Lake Manyara National Park, they are famed for their tree climbing lions. And they think that they climb the trees mainly to escape the biting flies. But they can do it. So I would say it's a combination of a power-to-weight ratio and the lack of ability to find purchase in slightly smaller trees. And that's why leopards do it much more often. And also, of course, they need to stash their kills away from other predators. That's the main reason that leopards climb their trees. And, of course, lions don't need to do that. Okay, chaps, we're going to have to leave here. I think there are other people coming. We've had a marvellous time. I'm going to hand you back to Jamie and a scat-eating vulture.